So first of all, so OnDOMAIN, to give you some context first, OnDOMAIN is one of the most recent Redshift products, and it's about threat detection, asset monitoring, and also it provides a takedown solution, which I will go in much more detail later. So regarding this account that I will be presenting, so this is an account with real data from a real entity, you may say. In this case, it's Cacao Show. It's a giant Brazilian chocolate retailer. They are not a customer of Redshift, but their situation is quite interesting to showcase here. They mainly suffer from imitation attempts. They are mainly unauthorized resellers. So I believe this is a good opportunity to show you actual cases related to this particular company. So having said that, let me start. So the first thing you see for OnDOMAIN is the dashboard. Now the dashboard offers you a summary view of all the data that you may have on the OnDOMAIN account at any point at that point in time, right? So we offer here some an overview of alerts and notifications, which are actions with some counters in here of different items and scenarios that may apply in your case, which you can review and then take action as needed. I will go into more detail later on this. You can see a summary of the logos, which I will also cover next. And essentially, here is a breakdown of all the lookalike domains that OnDOMAIN will detect over time in your account as soon as you start adding domain assets. So the first thing to do, because OnDOMAIN is quite a powerful product and already does lots of the work, let's say in an automatic ways. But the first thing you need to do is you need to add domain assets, or as we call them, domain assets. So there is this domains page here in which you are expected to add any domain assets you own for which you want OnDOMAIN to search for lookalikes, for lookalike domains that may be impersonating you or could be a potential threat for you. This is where the threat detection kicks in for OnDOMAIN. You add a domain asset, at least one, and then OnDOMAIN starts working behind the scenes with all its machinery to search for lookalike domains that may be related in terms of naming and other factors that I will point out later, to surface them and for you to review them and ideally take action on them. So in this case, there are only 2 domain assets, and you can already see there is quite some information here. So we show interesting stuff like the traffic rating, which is a combination of web and email traffic for any given domain that exists in OnDOMAIN. We also are highlighting here logo tags. So actually, let me show you this example. So of course, the table shows you a summarized view of the analysis of a given domain asset, but you can access the details page as I did here. And you can check interesting items like reputational issues, which in this case don't apply. There are no IP nor domain reputation issues. There are no subdomains detected. Now, this is important because OnDOMAIN is not only about top-level domains as domain assets, but also if you add a domain asset, a top-level domain asset that is, OnDOMAIN is able to also detect subdomains related to that domain asset. So if there were any, you will be able to access a more detailed page with a subdomains list and access even more specific information about those subdomains like the MX, DNS configuration, dangling CNAME problems, etc., which is quite useful to spot potential issues on the subdomain level. Now, for the screenshot, OnDOMAIN, as part of its scanning process, it attempts to grab a screenshot of the website, if any, that is related to a given domain. In this case, to benditocacaoresort.com. This domain asset has this. OnDOMAIN got this screenshot, but the interesting thing here, and I will go into detail later, is logos. So OnDOMAIN has been able to detect the Bendito Cacao logos in this screenshot, and there are actually 2 instances. So you can see here, there is this one and this one. Hopefully you can see them highlighted live here as I hover over these 2 boxes. So this is quite a powerful thing, maybe not for domain assets, but it is interesting for lookalike domains, which I will be showing later. So in here, we can see other stuff like the DMARC records, if they apply to the given domain, and other interesting information, which is useful to just to see the status of a given domain asset. Now, of course, logo detection is quite a powerful thing in OnDOMAIN itself. So there is a logos page, which allows you to upload logos, or company logos. In this case, it will be, in this case, it's Kakao Show, right? There are two classes, as we call them, which you could think of them as different brands or sub-brands within the same company, because they are different logos. Even though they are related to the same company, they are completely different. So for instance, this one is Bendito Cacao, which is different compared to Kakao Show, which, I mean, the name is different, and also the logos can be different. The interesting thing here is that, for instance, Kakao Show has different versions or variants of the logo. So in this case, you can see this text label with the stars on top of it. Here you can see this S with this C in here circling it. So there is no limitation in here in terms of logo variants. So if a given brand has many different logo variants and radically different, like in this case, that is fine. You can upload those logos here, and OnDOMAIN will have its logo detection trained for those logos, and those will be detected by OnDOMAIN if they appear in any website, as we will see later. So the next thing to do here is, let me do this. This is the activity page. So the activity page is probably the most interesting place in which you will be spending most of your time by reviewing all the lookalike domains that OnDOMAIN will be surfacing to you as it detects them. So in this case, we are talking about over 100 lookalike domains that were detected for Kakao Show. And there is lots of information in here, such as risk rating. We have also whether there is a screenshot detected, whether a logo was detected, and whether the domain is part or not. We have information on the DNS providers and the name server records from DNS, plus many other different signals that OnDOMAIN exposes in this table that can help you sort this information, filter it, and then take action by reviewing it in more detail. So in this case, I found two examples that I would like to show you. So, well, first of all, the interesting bits to show here, for instance, would be items that have the Kakao Show logo detected on them. So, for instance, kakaoshow.com, if I access this, I can get a more detailed view on what is going on here. So I can get details on, as I said, name server records. I can get to see the IP addresses that are related to this domain, email configuration to check whether the domain is able to, or is configured to send and or receive emails, plus other useful information like reputational issues, detected emails, whether it has been reported. In this case, we support only report. We check whether a given lookalike domain has been reported in Google's safe browsing service. So if that were the case, you would see that in here. We are also displaying the whois information at the bottom to get more detailed information on which entity is behind this domain, if that is available, plus other useful information like the creation date, expiration date, etc. And the interesting thing here is again the logo detection, probably, plus the redirects. I didn't mention this, but when OnDOMAIN attempts to grab a screenshot, it follows any redirect chain that may apply in that case until it reaches the final destination, and then it attempts to take a screenshot, which in this case you can see that we got from a redirect from HTTP into HTTPS and then into the website from kakaoshow.com.br. So in this case, this more likely will be potentially a domain asset of Kakao Show. So it's not a lookalike domain itself, like in a sense that it belongs to some external entity, but it belongs to the actual company that will belong to this account. So if that were the case, OnDOMAIN allows you to apply classifications to these lookalike domains. So this is the unclassified tab, which is currently active. And OnDOMAIN exposes a list of actions to apply on these lookalike domains. So in this case, if we consider this is actually a domain asset, not a thread in any way for Kakao Show, we could add it to the My Domains page, to the list of domain assets, using this action button here. Alternatively, we can see that there are many more lookalikes in here that, for instance, this one, kakaoshowtorres.com.br. This one also has a screenshot which looks quite legitimate. It's a website, has to do with food, with menus or whatever, but it has the Kakao Show logo in here. Now you can see from the redirects in here that this is redirecting to something completely different, some cardapiodigital.io with quite a long path in here. So this is unlikely to be a domain asset from Kakao Show. This could be more potentially an unauthorized reseller or someone else trying to leverage on the Kakao Show brand and reputation. So in this case, again, you could take action on this. In this case, it will be more of a threat to Kakao Show as a company. So there are multiple things to do here. This could be added as a high-risk lookalike domain, and it could be even marked for takedown. So takedown is quite an interesting thing here and could apply in this case probably. So if you find out that any of these lookalike domains are, let's say, a very high threat to you, they are impersonating your website, they are trying to trick your users by setting up a login form or some sort of form that would extract any personal information from your customers because of this impersonation attempt, you could try to attempt a takedown process on that lookalike domain. So OnDOMAIN offers a takedown process integration. And in order to do that, you will need to mark a lookalike for takedown first. Now, takedowns, I can go to this page in here, I have it prepared. When you mark something as takedown, it is implicitly and automatically marked as a high-risk lookalike. So it will appear in this high-risk tab. Anything that is in the high-risk tab is considered by you as potential threat. And in this case, OnDOMAIN will scan that more often. So OnDOMAIN by default scans both unclassified and low-risk lookalikes every day, so every 24 hours. But in the case of the high-risk lookalikes, it scans them 4 times per day so that any changes are reflected more rapidly here and you can take action sooner. So in the case of takedowns, you mark something for takedown. It's not started, as in this case. This is a takedown attempt on some random website which doesn't exist. Mainly that's why you see this everything here in gray. But the point here is, if you start a takedown, you mark something for takedown and you take your time to add any compelling evidence to support your takedown case. So you could add any screenshots from the website, although OnDOMAIN will do that automatically as soon as it has a screenshot. You can add any context in here in this notes field to provide a more descriptive text on what is going on in case OnDOMAIN, because OnDOMAIN takes a screenshot of the top level domain, but it could be that you go to that domain and you start navigating within that website and you start seeing more specific paths on that website that are even more clearer on their impersonation attempt against your company. So in that case, you could provide that as an extra evidence in this notes field, plus anything else like email headers you may have received. Your company or someone from your supply chain, they may have received an email trying to impersonate your company and it belongs to this domain, in which case you could add it here and prepare. Essentially, you will prepare an evidence bundle made of notes plus file attachments, and then you will apply for takedown. Now, when applying for takedown, one thing to know here is takedowns are not free, in the sense that Redshift charges for takedowns, but only if they are successful. So this is important. You can start a takedown process. We have partnered with OPSEC, which is a leader in the takedown scene. So they are quite an important takedown provider company, and we have integrated a takedown flow with their services to allow you to issue takedown requests more easily from within OnDOMAIN. So in this case, as soon as you apply for takedown and you commit to these terms and conditions and give us the authorization to proceed with this case and start a conversation with OPSEC in this case, the takedown process will start, formally speaking, and OPSEC in this case will start their own research based on your evidence plus their evidence. And over time, in a matter of days at most, ideally, if there is a clear impersonation attempt, a fraud case, then the takedown will end up successfully. If the takedown provider, in this case OPSEC, will need more evidence, you will be notified about this because of the status changes in this takedown. The status will change to evidence required, and you will get a descriptive message saying or indicating what is needed or why is this needed, because not all takedown requests can happen, equally speaking, or in the same way. Some of them need more information, some of them are less clear. So it's a case-by-case situation, but if there is some clear fraud situation or scenario in a given website, that should end up successfully, and as I said, within a matter of days at most. So this is like a high-level view of what OnDOMAIN can offer you. One thing that is not in here, but I would like to point it out, is the categorization. So OnDOMAIN is able to detect whether a given lookalike domain is parked, like you can see in this case. And by parked, we mean that it takes a screenshot, and well, in this case, this may be more of a, not the best example, but parked domains follow a visual pattern. So in this case, we could see that, well, this is something that is parked or being set up, like a landing page. Sorry, this is another account. So, for instance, here, so you get to see this is an example of a parked domain. They follow this pattern. It's your usual domain for sale from GoDaddy or some other provider. Which may not be that useful, but you could check if a given lookalike domain is parked and maybe take some action, like preventively buying that domain or keeping an eye on it by adding it to the high risk tab to keep an eye on domain to scan it more often. So the idea here with this table is you have lots of signals. You can filter on this. So you can, for instance, I only want Kakao. So most of these will be there, but some of them won't. Another thing to notice here is the categorization. Categorization not only applies to parked. OnDOMAIN has an integration with Hardenized, which is the most recent Redshift platform product, or the most recent product that joined our Redshift platform or product suite. And this integration, what it means is that in this page, in this unclassified tab, if any potential domain assets are detected through different means, because there are extra signals or extra data sources that Hardenized handles that can help finding out domains that may belong to you based on the domain assets that you added in this page. So this detection is based on SSL certificates, WHOIS information, DNS MX configurations, etc. A wide range of data sources or signals that Hardenized works with, which can appear here. Now, this integration is not a full integration with Hardenized, meaning that this integration doesn't replace Hardenized within OnDOMAIN, but it's an integration with part of Hardenized, which is quite useful in this case because, as I said, OnDOMAIN can also act as a domain asset inventory product for you. So In here, you could add all the domain assets that you own as a company. Not all of them need to be active for monitoring, especially the domain assets that have the same name at different top-level domains. So kakaoshow.com.br and .com.it, for instance, although that I don't think that exists, but the thing is, you could have kakaoshow.com.br enabled and any other kakaoshow. Whatever could be deactivated because OnDOMAIN is smart enough to find out lookalike domains based on just one sample of a given name. So you don't need to enable all of this. Of course, if a domain asset is inactive, OnDOMAIN will still scan the domain asset as to get you this information that you can see here, but it won't use that domain asset as a sample for lookalike detection. Yeah, well, the keyword section, I don't want to go into much detail here, but this is essentially to reduce the noise of lookalike of detected lookalikes in case you have your own domains that have very short names. So for instance, the World Health Organization has this WHO.org website, and they usually will have this sort of websites with this 3-letter domain name. So in that case, because there are many other words, English words in this case, that may contain that specific sequence of letters, you may want to avoid that amount of noise because it will probably be much more compared to the actual set of lookalikes that you will be interested in. In that case, you could add the full word here, save it, and then OnDOMAIN will apply an extra layer of filtering to remove that noise I mentioned of words that contain who but are not who in any way. But this is something that we can go in more detail in another session. Something I need to point out, which is quite important. OnDOMAIN is able to integrate with other products, not only Hardenized. The Hardenized integration is automatic, let's say, so no need to set up anything on your own. But you can also integrate with the rest of the Redshift product suite. So you can integrate OnDOMAIN with OnInbox and also with OnDMARC. For that matter, you will need to generate the corresponding API keys from each product and add them in here, and then the integration will be fulfilled. What that means is that essentially, or from in a summarized way, any lookalike domains that you mark as high risk, you can push them to OnInbox, to the threat list there. And in the case of OnDMARC, if you have domains added in domain assets in your OnDMARC account, those will get pulled into your OnDOMAIN account automatically to this domains page. So essentially that removes some work from you. And finally, there is alerting in place. We offer automatically, so OnDOMAIN automatically will allow you will alert you on any takedown status change, new lookalike detections, and any changes, in this case, increases in risk rating for high-risk lookalikes. And you can also notify different people in here in case you want. We also offer some extra integrations in here like Splunk, Slack, and Cortex-R, which may be interesting for you. And a final integration, which is not related to alerting itself, but more to expand your lookalike detection feeds is an API access. So OnDOMAIN exposes at this moment just one API endpoint, which you can use to integrate any data sources of lookalikes that you may have on your site. So that essentially meaning that you can push lookalike domains that you may detect from any of your own data sources into OnDOMAIN. And OnDOMAIN will apply the same process that it does for its own data sources. It will find matches based on your domain assets of that feed of lookalikes that you push into it, and will keep only the matches and will surface them in the activity page, just like any other lookalike domain that it detects on its own. And of course, there is the settings page in here, which is not really interesting at the moment, but we will be enhancing this, expanding this over time. So what you see here is OnDOMAIN in its current shape, but of course, this product will be evolving over time. and we will be adding more features related to logo detection, lookalike detection, and so on over time, which will be quite exciting and quite powerful for you to make threat detection easier for you and for your company.